And we are up and running, and it is a beautiful day in the heartland of the country. Lots of storms, and I think there were probably some tornadoes that were breaking loose around the country, but nonetheless, that is all part of life in this material universe. And how are you this morning, Barrett?
I'm doing really great, and yeah, beautiful sunny blue skies here, but yeah, definitely big storms. Excuse me, earlier. So yeah, our wild up and down world will continue as it always does, I guess.
Yes, it is always a process, but so the wild up and down world. Um, we are looking at the Song of Prayer, and we're going to pick up where we left off last week. So, and we were at the section on forgiveness. And I'll go ahead and read this next paragraph here for us so we can stay current. And it reads, pardon me, a little bit of the remove the eyeglasses thing here. Forgiveness is a call to sanity, for who but the insane would look on sin when he could see the face of Christ instead? This is the choice you make, the simplest one, and yet fully the only one that you make. God calls on you to save his son from death by offering Christ's love to him. This is your need, and God holds out this gift to you. As he would give, so must you give as well. And thus is prayer restored to formlessness, beyond all limits, into timelessness, with nothing of the past to hold it back from reuniting with the ceaseless song that all creation sings unto God. And, you know, this, once again, in keeping with the entire theme of the course, goes back to that idea of seeing everybody in context to their spiritual identity, their spiritual truth. And at the bottom of that context, at the foundation of it, is that we are all one. And as much as you may have resistance to the idea of being one with Donald Trump or one with the leader of North Korea, I can't think of his name, but he's
Kim Jong-un.
Yes, Kim Jong. He's a delightful soul. And Mitch McConnell, you know, he's one of our heroes here on the planet. So all of these people, you have to be able to see behind the illusion. You have to be able to penetrate that shell that you were the one who built around their identity. You constructed their identity to please your ego, to give you someone to attack. And so that whole line of thinking gets derailed once again as we're looking at the Psalm of Prayer.
Yeah, and it's such a beautiful dynamic to see that these people that we think are our enemies are actually our saviors. There's a beautiful workbook lesson along this topic. I remember the first time I was doing the workbook and this lesson came up to kind of think of your enemy, and then to start to see him with kindness and with love, and ultimately to recognize that he is the light of the world. You know, that was a big shift for me. It was a political person for me at the time. I had George W. Bush as my sort of person that I was projecting a lot of guilt onto. But by the end of that workbook lesson, I really had a different experience of him. I really could see he was just calling out for help, that it was a very dysfunctional way to do that. But all he was asking for was kindness and love. And same with the whole list of people that you just named and anyone else that might come to mind as we're talking about this. Everything is either an expression of love or a call for it. And that's all. It really is that simple. And we might resist seeing it that way, but as we begin to see it that way, it really starts to transform our whole experience of everyone in this world and everything in this world until we have no more blocks to our vision. And that's the capital V vision, the vision of Christ, the seeing with eyes of love that we all have, but we might not always be tuning into.
Yeah, that's very true. And it's interesting that you mentioned George Bush Jr. because, during his presidency, he was very much a target of the liberal community. And there were a lot of people who took it upon themselves to really, personalize their connection to him and loathe him. And yet, after all is said and done, he became somewhat reclusive after his 8 years in the White House. And now he's very involved with veterans from the Middle East, the Gulf War situation there. And he's doing portraits of them, and he's doing a lot of work with them. So we're seeing a side of him come forth now where there's a lot of redemption in his actions and activities. And, I think that once you get somebody out of the crosshairs and you're willing to expand your vision and your acceptance of them, you start to see them in an entirely different light.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's not always easy to see the common humanity that we all have, especially when someone seems to be doing something hurtful or mean or cruel. But that sameness is there in spite of the form. And the only reason at times we're not seeing it is because we don't want to. And it's not always as nice to see that it's our holding back. That sometimes is a little challenging to admit, but it's really helpful because it really means that we are in the driver's seat. We are the ones that are choosing the perspective that we have. And we are the ones that can let go of this old perspective to choose a new one. So it really puts us back in a position where we're not a victim of what's happening, that we are the one that has the choice in every moment, as Jesus says, for love or for fear.
Yeah, exactly. It erases the victim image and replaces it for culpability. As you said, it is your choice. You are culpable. That commitment, that decision, and for advancing with, advancing truth rather than with the figments of your own imagination.
Yeah. So just continuing on here, the next paragraph says, "But to achieve this end, you first must learn before you reach where learning cannot go." So it's talking about in order to achieve this oneness that we're naming, we have to learn. And then he says, before you reach where learning cannot go. Well, in heaven, learning cannot go, right? There's no need to learn when you already are in that state of pure bliss, in that state of pure connection to the divine truth. And then he says, forgiveness is the key, but who can use a key when he has lost the door for which the key was made and where alone it fits? Therefore, we make distinctions so that prayer can be released from darkness into light. Forgiveness's role must be reversed and cleansed from evil usages and hateful goals. And here he introduces this term that's really an interesting part of this pamphlet. He says, forgiveness to destroy must be unveiled in all its treachery and then let go forever and forever. There can be no trace of it remaining if the plan that God established for returning be achieved at last and learning be complete. So when he brings up this idea of forgiveness to destroy, he's talking about the ways that we typically forgive in this world, right? It's this idea, well, I'm going to forgive you because I have God and you don't. I'm going to forgive you because I know what's right, and obviously you're this poor, lecherous soul that can't be redeemed. These are the ways that we often use forgiveness, and he's going to kind of detail them in the next section. We might not get there today, but we'll be talking about soon all the different forms we have of seeming to be spiritual and nice, when in fact it's an indirect attack. You could say it's the way that we sort of wear a spiritualized ego. So it's still the ego thought system, but it's spouting Course in Miracles quotes now, or it's using these concepts to make ourselves better than, or less than, or in some way different than anyone else in the world. So it's sort of a little slippery and little treacherous form of the ego, but it's important that we see that it's something that we sometimes might do, so that we can avoid that as much as we can.
Yes, it is insidious how the ego is always alert for every possible avenue that it can take to flex its muscle. And I think that's why, the forgiveness idea, I definitely work with that thought, kind of skip over it in the sense that I try to just completely and totally stay in a constant state of affirming that none of this is real, it never happened. And so even forgiveness is not necessary, because there's nothing here that has any substance. And I think it's definitely important to use the idea of forgiveness as you're on that journey to try and rectify your belief systems about somebody else, or the illusion of somebody else. But I think at some point you really have to start getting into that deeper level and constantly making yourself mindful of the fact that you are witnessing something that never really happened in truth. And it has no substance, it has no real validity. And for me, that seems to actually work better, simply because I can look at a situation and say, well, that's nonsense, because I wrote a script for Jesus and he was a villain, and I know that's absurd.
Yeah. Well, and it may just be a little bit of a terminology issue here, because what you described in my mind is forgiveness. So I think of forgiveness as letting go of our projections and realizing that they're not true, and then allowing us to return back to the oneness that we've never really left. So I think Jesus uses these words very differently, than our sort of modern understanding. And I think forgiveness has that same feel to it for me. As he says at one point, we forgive what has not occurred. Well, that tracks exactly with what you were just saying, Chris, about none of this is real, right? So awakening to the fact that nothing has happened, that we've never left heaven, that the separation from God is impossible and cannot truly occur. To me, that's what forgiveness means. So I think we're really talking about the same thing, and maybe just slightly different ways.
Right. The Italians call it dialectica rhetorica. So making your words, what's the word for it, more important than the thought underneath them. And that goes back to that idea once again of words are but they're twice removed from reality, and they are but symbols of symbols. So it's just it's compelling, and it's constant. It is a constant journey. You never really have time to sit in a corner and pity yourself. You have to stay on the trail.
That is true. That is true. Yes. What was that? Tom Thumb pull out a plum and suck on his thumb. I forget how that whole one goes, but
I see a lot of that in the world we inhabit, and I find myself doing that every once in a while, and I think that it's an easy trap to slide into. The woe is me. I am so overwhelmed by my travail on this darkened world. But once you stand up and dust yourself off, guess what? The light starts to creep in, and all of a sudden it's not that much of a darkened world.
It's true. Yeah. Yeah. And that's what all this work is. It's about cleansing the darkness from our mind. The darkness is not real. You know, a shadow has no real substance to it. It's simply just a lack of light. And when the light shines on the shadow, what happens? It's just gone, right? And how could it disappear so quickly? Because there was no there, right? A shadow is nothing. And so is the ego thought system. It's simply a meaningless shadow, and we just let the light shine on it, and it disappears. So that's what we just keep doing.
Yes, and after you hit that tipping point, it starts to get a lot easier. There is a tipping point, and that's what I really want people to realize is that you're not stuck in this situation where it's just climbing one mountain after another and after another. You finally arrive at a point where it becomes easier and more comfortable and more casual, and eventually even an unnoticed process where you step out of struggling with things because you've taught yourself, you've taught your mind to just let go. You don't need to struggle with it. And I think that's really, the vision that we have to keep our intention set upon.
It's true. That's the work, is to continue to stay directed towards the goal. And whenever we get a little off target, not to beat ourselves up, but just to say, oh, right, this is what I really want. I don't want that anymore. I want the love. I want the joy, and to keep moving in that direction.
Yes, and it does get easier and easier. Well, to finish this section off here, this final paragraph says, this is the world of opposites, and you must choose between them every instant while this world retains reality for you. You must learn alternatives for choice, or you will not be able to attain your freedom. Let it then be clear to you exactly what forgiveness means to you, and learn what it should be to set you free. The level of your prayer depends on this, for here it waits its freedom to ascend above the world of chaos into peace. And that's really at the foundation of what we're looking for, is to reclaim our sense of being at peace with the world. So now, the next section, which we'll take up next week, is how we're approaching all of these concepts kind of summarized, and the input here from the supplement to A Course in Miracles.
Yeah, and you mentioned the foundation, and I just wanted to recognize the foundation for inner peace and the foundation for A Course in Miracles, who actually are the copyright holders for this section, and who have really stewarded the course throughout its whole, from the very beginning. They published it and made it available. I was just at the Celebrating Inner Peace event that I was one of the coordinators of, that was out in Utah at David Hoffmeister's Living Miracles Monastery, and it was a real just joining of love. Tamara Morgan and Bob Rosenthal, the current presidents of Foundation for Inner Peace, shared so many touching stories and anecdotes about their lives and how they came into the roles that they have, as well as their connections with the originators, the original four that joined together, being Judy Scutch, of course, Helen Schuckman, the scribe, and Bill Thetford, really the co-scribe. It couldn't have happened without him. And then, of course, Ken Wapnick, who went on to take such a beautiful teaching role in this whole endeavor. And it was really just a wonderful time. And I feel like expressing my gratitude here on this joining as well. So yeah, it was a great time.
It's fabulous, and I'm sure we're going to be seeing a lot more of these types of events popping up all around the country, or all around the world, because my sense of it is that we are on the threshold of this next wave of expansion with the imagery and the truth that we find in A Course in Miracles. So, keep your eyes open, people, and get out there and join in. And I will mention real fast here that if you want to hear Helen Schuckman in a brief interview, go to our website, www.themiraclewithin.org. And on that landing page, on the home page, you'll be able to listen to an audio file of Helen. It's really very illuminating, and it gives you an even deeper sense of how profound this work is and what the role was that Helen played in it.
Yeah, yeah, there's so much good stuff. So thank you, Chris, for putting that website together. I know it's a real labor of love, and I can feel it every time I visit how much heart there is in it. So I really appreciate you, man. I really do.
Well, it's a journey back to oneness for all of us. So I will chat with you in less than a week, because we're going to have a special event come up. I'm thinking maybe we should name it ACIM Space Cadets, because it'll be a group of real space cadets talking about A Course in Miracles and coming together for the first time. Devin, Stephen, Barrett, and myself will be putting together a video, and who knows where that's going to go.
All right, yeah, that'll be fun. So I think that's coming up this Tuesday. It's at 3:30 Central Time. If people want to kind of be on the lookout for that so they can hop on live while we're recording it, that'd be great to have you there.
Absolutely. Well, you have a fabulous day and a great weekend. Stay dry, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right, sounds good. Bye, man.